My name is Patricia Monroe. I am 57 years old, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. For most of my life, I worked as an elementary school teacher, shaping young minds and watching children grow. But beyond the classroom, my true responsibility was at home. I was a widow, left alone to raise my two children, Ethan, who is now 29, and Claire, who is 26. Life in Nashville was not always easy for me. I lived in a modest house, the kind that creaked in the winter and grew unbearably warm in the summer. But it was a place I called home. That house was filled with memories, pictures of birthdays taped on the fridge, report cards pinned proudly on the wall, and the faint laughter of my children still echoing through its small rooms. When my husband died suddenly, my world nearly collapsed. I had no time to grieve because my children needed me. Ethan was only 12 at the time, and Claire was 9. Two frightened children were looking up to me, searching for stability in a world that had just stolen their father. I promised myself that I would never let them feel abandoned. I worked long hours as a teacher, often picking up tutoring jobs on weekends. Some days, I barely had the strength to cook dinner, but I forced myself, because I knew those family meals mattered. On nights when my paycheck didn't stretch far enough, I pretended I wasn't hungry so that my children could eat more. "Mum, aren't you going to eat?" Ethan would ask, his young face full of concern. I'd smile and say, "Oh, sweetheart, I had a late lunch at school." Claire would look at me suspiciously, but she never pushed me too hard. In those years, my entire identity revolved around being their mother. I was both parents, both protector and provider, both comfort and discipline. Every sacrifice I made with love. Nashville might not have been the most glamorous city, but to me, it was home because of them. And so, when people ask me what I did in life, I don't just say I was a teacher. I say I was a mother who gave everything, every ounce of strength, every spare dollar, every heartbeat, for her children. That was my life, and I was proud of it. But as I sit here now, reflecting on where it all led me, I realize that pride can sometimes blind you. I believed that love and sacrifice would always be remembered, that loyalty would naturally return to me from the ones I raised. I believed my son, Ethan, would grow up to stand beside me as I grew older. I was wrong. After my husband's death, survival became an everyday battle. I was a widow at 34, with 2 young children depending on me in Nashville, Tennessee. My small teacher's salary was barely enough to keep the lights on, let alone provide the extras every child dreams of. Yet somehow I managed. I still remember one winter night when the heating broke. It was freezing, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. I wrapped Ethan and Claire in blankets and sat between them on the couch, holding them close to my body, whispering stories until they fell asleep. My hands were numb, but my heart was determined. "Mum will always keep you warm," I whispered. I picked up part-time tutoring in the evenings. Sometimes I cleaned neighbors' houses on weekends. People in the neighborhood would say, "Patricia, you're working yourself to death." But they didn't see the look on Ethan's face when he got new basketball shoes, or the way Claire's eyes lit up when she opened a book I could finally afford. Those small moments made every sacrifice worth it. There were nights when exhaustion brought me to tears. I would collapse onto the couch after midnight, papers to grade still stacked high on the table, and ask myself, how long can I keep this up? But then I'd hear Claire's voice in the morning. "Mom, I love you." Or Ethan's laughter echoing from the kitchen, and suddenly I could. I skipped meals to save money. I patched Ethan's jeans so many times the fabric was more stitches than cloth. I told Claire bedtime stories when what I really wanted was to fall into bed myself. My sacrifices were invisible to the world, but they were the foundation on which my children stood. Looking back, I realized that Ethan and Claire grew up with very different reactions to these sacrifices. Claire noticed. She saw me stay up late, saw me fake a smile when I was exhausted, and she appreciated it. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed to accept it all as normal, as though the sacrifices were owed to him. I didn't mind then. I told myself that children don't always understand the depth of a mother's love. But now, at 57, living in Nashville, Tennessee, I can't help but ask myself, did I make it too easy for him? Did I protect him so much that he forgot what I gave? At the time, none of these thoughts mattered. All that mattered was keeping my children safe, happy, and loved. That was my mission, my purpose. I believed that love given was love earned. I believed that the bond between a mother and her son could never break. I was wrong. As the years passed in Nashville, Tennessee, I began to see differences between my children. Claire, my daughter, was tender-hearted and thoughtful. She would bring me tea when I was tired, write me little notes on sticky paper that said, "Love you, Mum." Even as she grew older, she called me every day from college just to ask how I was doing. Ethan was different. My son had always been charming and ambitious. He was the boy people liked instantly, the one teachers praised for his intelligence. I was so proud of him. But as he grew older, I noticed a distance forming between us. When Ethan got married, that distance became a wall. His wife was polite but distant, and soon Ethan stopped visiting as often. Phone calls became shorter. He no longer asked me how I was doing. Conversations revolved around his life, his work, his plans. Claire, meanwhile, stayed grounded. She'd come home from college on weekends to cook dinner with me. "Mum, I love being in this kitchen with you," she'd say, laughing as she chopped onions. Sometimes she even stayed the night, curling up on the old couch just to keep me company. The contrast was stark. Ethan seemed to believe I would always be fine on my own, while Claire treated me as though my well-being mattered deeply. There was a moment that stung me deeply. It was Thanksgiving in Nashville. I had set the table with care, cooked all of Ethan's favorite dishes, and waited with excitement. But Ethan arrived late, barely touched his food, and left early, saying he had other plans. Claire stayed behind, helped me wash dishes, and hugged me tight. "Don't be sad, Mom," she whispered. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the photographs on the wall. Ethan as a baby in my arms, Ethan's graduation picture, Ethan smiling with his basketball trophy. I thought, where did that little boy go? I didn't realize it then, but this growing distance was preparing the ground for what would come next. The first time Ethan mentioned a nursing home, I thought he was joking. We were sitting in the living room of my Nashville house, and I had been complaining about back pain. Claire instantly offered, "Mum, I'll take you to the doctor tomorrow." Ethan leaned back and said casually, "Maybe it's time to think about other options. You know, a place where they can really take care of you. Like a nursing home." I froze. My heart stopped for a second. A nursing home? For me? I had spent decades giving him every piece of myself, and now he was suggesting handing me over to strangers? I laughed nervously. "Ethan, I'm only 57. I don't need a nursing home," but his face stayed serious. "Mom, you're slowing down. You shouldn't be living alone in Nashville. It's dangerous. A nursing home would be better." Claire's eyes filled with anger. "Are you serious, Ethan? She's our mother, not a burden." The word hit me hard. Burden. Ethan hadn't said it yet, but I could feel it in his tone, in the way he looked at me. I swallowed my tears and changed the subject. But deep inside, I knew something was breaking. That was the first sign. The first crack in the bond I thought was unbreakable. It happened on a grey morning in Nashville. Ethan came over with his wife, their faces tight with determination. "Mum," he said, "we've decided. You can't stay here anymore. You're coming with us today." I didn't understand at first. "Where?" I asked. "To a nursing home," his wife said firmly. The words crushed me. My chest tightened. A nursing home? Ethan, I'm your mother. This is my home. Ethan avoided my eyes. Mom, you'll be better there. They can take care of you. You'll have company. This house is too much for you. Claire screamed. No! You can't do this to her. But Ethan silenced her. You don't know responsibility, Claire. This is what's best. Before I knew it, my suitcase was packed. I sat in the back of Ethan's car, tears streaming down my face, staring out the window as Nashville blurred past. The city I had built my life in, the streets I had walked to work, the house where I raised my children. It was slipping away. The nursing home was cold, sterile, filled with the smell of disinfectant. The room was small, with a single bed and a window that looked out onto a parking lot. Ethan hugged me quickly, without warmth, and said, You'll be fine, Mum. Then he left. That night, as I lay on the narrow bed, I whispered to myself, After everything, after every sacrifice, he calls me a burden. And in that moment, my heart shattered. The first week inside that nursing home felt like a lifetime. Patricia Monroe, once the strong teacher who guided children through lessons of life, now sat silently in a sterile room where the walls smelled of disinfectant. The wallpaper was faded, the hallways echoed with footsteps of nurses pushing carts, and the whispers of other abandoned parents pierced through the silence at night. Patricia couldn't help but feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on her heart. She remembered the warmth of her Nashville home, the wooden floors Ethan used to crawl on as a baby, the kitchen where she cooked pancakes on Sunday mornings, the backyard where Claire picked daisies for her hair. All of it seemed so far away. Now she stared at white ceilings and heard nothing but the distant hum of an air conditioner. Each night, she lay in her small bed and whispered to herself, Was my love really just a burden? Tears slid quietly into her pillow, but she never let the nurses see. Pride kept her strong, but her heart was breaking piece by piece. Other residents often shared their stories. One man wept every evening, muttering that his son had left him here to die. A woman next door would scream her daughter's name, but no one ever came. Listening to them, Patricia realized she wasn't alone in her suffering. Yet that realization didn't ease her pain. It only deepened the wound. Claire called every night. Mum, I'll get you out of there. Just give me a little time, she pleaded. Patricia tried to sound calm. Sweetheart, focus on your work. I'm fine here. But she wasn't fine. The loneliness was crushing her spirit. Ethan barely called. When he did, his voice was cold and distant. Everything okay, Mom? And Patricia, hiding her pain, would answer, Yes, everything is fine. Deep inside, she wondered if he even cared anymore, or if his only concern was her bank account and house. One afternoon, Patricia wandered into the small prayer room tucked away in the corner of the facility. The silence there felt different, heavy, yet comforting. She closed her eyes and remembered her years of sacrifice, late nights grading papers, working extra jobs to make ends meet, selling jewelry to pay for Ethan's tuition, skipping meals so the children never went hungry. And now, Ethan had called her a burden. In that prayer room, Patricia's grief began to transform into resolve. She whispered, If he thinks I'm a burden, then maybe it's time to show him what a real burden looks like. It was during a grey, rainy morning that Patricia made her decision. Sitting by the window of the nursing home, watching raindrops slide down the glass, she realized she had more power than Ethan thought. She wasn't helpless. She still had control over her life, her dignity, and most importantly, her assets. For years, Patricia had quietly saved money. Her modest salary as a teacher, combined with a small inheritance from her late parents, had allowed her to build a respectable nest egg. And then there was the house in Nashville, the home filled with memories, now waiting to be sold off by Ethan. Patricia reached for her old leather folder, which she had insisted on bringing with her. Inside were documents, bank statements, the deed to the house, and her late husband's letters. Flipping through them, she felt both pain and strength. Ethan thought she was weak, dependent, and easy to manipulate. He had no idea how prepared she actually was. That day, she called her old family lawyer, Mr. Harris, a man who had known her since her husband's passing. When he arrived at the nursing home and saw her frail figure in that cold room, he was shocked. "Patricia, what are you doing here?" he asked. Patricia's voice trembled, but carried a fire. "Ethan put me here. He said I was a burden, and now he plans to sell my home. I won't let that happen." Mr. Harris leaned forward. "You have options. You can change your will, transfer assets, protect yourself." Patricia looked him directly in the eyes. "Then that's exactly what we'll do. I want everything, my house, my savings, every penny, transferred to Claire. She's the one who stood by me." For the first time in weeks, Patricia felt alive. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice. It was about making Ethan face the weight of his own actions. That night, lying in bed, she smiled for the first time since arriving at the nursing home. "He called me a burden," she whispered. "Now let him carry the burden of his own choices." The following Sunday, Claire came to visit. Her face was pale, exhaustion evident from working extra hours, but her eyes softened the moment she saw her mother. She hugged Patricia tightly and whispered, "Mum, I hate seeing you here. I'll take you home soon." Patricia stroked her daughter's hair, then gently pulled her to sit beside her. "Claire, there's something you need to know," she began. Slowly, she told her everything: Ethan's betrayal, his plans to sell the house, and the meeting with Mr. Harris. Claire's eyes widened in disbelief. "Mum, are you serious? You're giving everything to me?" Patricia nodded firmly. "Yes. Because when everyone else turned away, you were the only one who held my hand. I want to make sure you're safe. I want you to have the security I worked for." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes. She shook her head. "Mum, I don't care about the house or the money. I just want you back home. That's all I've ever wanted." Patricia squeezed her hand. "I know. And that's exactly why you deserve it. Because you loved me when it wasn't convenient. Because you respected me when your brother didn't." For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by Claire's soft sobs. Then Patricia continued, her voice strong. "Your brother needs to learn that parents aren't burdens. He needs to understand the consequences of betrayal," Claire finally whispered. "Mum, whatever you decide, I'll stand by you." At that moment, Patricia knew she wasn't alone anymore. She had her daughter's strength beside her. Together, they would face whatever storm was coming. Within a week, Mr. Harris returned with the legal papers. Patricia sat at the small wooden desk in the nursing home's lounge, the stack of documents spread out in front of her. Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen, but her heart was steady. "Once you sign these, Patricia," Mr. Harris explained, "your Nashville house and all savings will be officially transferred to Claire. Ethan will have no claim." Patricia took a deep breath. Memories of Ethan's childhood flashed in her mind. His first steps, his graduation day, the nights she stayed awake while he was sick. For a second, her heart softened, but then she remembered his cold words. "You're a burden." The sting of betrayal sharpened her resolve. She signed. One signature after another, her tears falling onto the paper. With every stroke, she wasn't just transferring property, she was transferring justice. Claire held her mother's hand as she finished. "Mom, are you sure?" she whispered. Patricia looked at her daughter, her voice calm but unshakable. "Yes, Ethan chose to abandon me. You chose to stand by me. Choices have consequences." When the last paper was signed, Patricia felt lighter. For the first time in months, she wasn't just a victim. She was in control. Ethan thought he had stripped her of everything. But now, she had given him the one thing he truly deserved: nothing. It didn't take long for Ethan to discover what had happened. When the lawyer's notice reached him, he stormed into the nursing home days later, his face red with rage. "How could you do this, Mom?" he shouted, not even greeting her. "That house was supposed to be mine. You've ruined everything." Other residents and nurses turned to look, but Patricia remained calm. Sitting in her chair, she raised her chin and said firmly, "No, Ethan. You ruined everything the moment you called me a burden." Ethan's voice cracked. "I was just trying to make things easier." Patricia cut him off. "Easier for you, not for me. You wanted my house, my money, my dignity. But you forgot that I'm still your mother, and a mother doesn't forget betrayal." His fists clenched, his eyes filled with panic. "I need that house, Mom. Do you even know what you've done?" Patricia leaned closer, her voice quiet but sharp as glass. "Yes, Ethan. I've given the house and the savings to the only child who treated me like a mother, not a burden. That is what I've done." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Ethan's face twisted between anger and shame. He stormed out without another word, leaving behind only the echo of his footsteps. Patricia sat back, her hands trembling but her heart steady. She had finally taken back her power. A few days after discovering the legal transfer, Ethan returned, his face flushed with anger and disbelief. Patricia Monroe sat in the nursing home lounge, reading a book Claire had brought her, when Ethan stormed in like a hurricane. "Mom, this isn't fair," he yelled. "You can't just give everything to Claire. That house, the money, it's mine." Patricia didn't flinch. She closed her book slowly, her eyes meeting his with the calm certainty of someone who had lived through storms far worse. "Ethan," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "you've already taken from yourself what matters most: your selfishness, your disregard, your betrayal. Those are the real losses." Claire stood behind her mother, fists clenched. "Ethan, stop yelling. Mom is not a burden. She never was." Ethan ignored her and turned back to Patricia. "Do you know how much I've done for this family? I work hard. I support my wife." Patricia interrupted him gently. "Ethan, what you've done is only for yourself. You tried to erase me, to treat me as if I were invisible. You called me a burden, and for that, I have no words of comfort. I only have truth." He took a step closer, voice rising again. "Mum, this is insane. You can't do this." Patricia's gaze hardened. "I can, and I did. Everything I worked for, everything I sacrificed, every sleepless night, every meal skipped, every dollar earned, goes to the one who respected me. That is Claire. You chose betrayal. You live with that choice now." Ethan's hands trembled. Rage battled guilt on his face. For the first time, Patricia saw fear. Fear of the consequences of his own actions. He stormed out again, slamming the door behind him, leaving Patricia and Claire in the quiet aftermath. Patricia leaned back, taking a deep breath. She felt both sorrow and relief. Sorrow for the son she had raised, and relief that justice in her way had been delivered. Weeks passed, and Patricia and Claire spent their days reconnecting with the life they deserved. One evening, Ethan returned one last time, attempting to reason, perhaps guilt-ridden, but still defiant. "Mom, you don't understand," he began. "I was only trying to do what I thought was right. You can't just leave me out." Patricia shook her head slowly. "No, Ethan. You've misunderstood everything your life has taught you. A mother is never a burden. I gave you everything, and yet you saw only obligation. That is your real burden, the inability to see love for what it is." Ethan's voice faltered. But I... Patricia stood, towering in dignity even in her frail frame. No more words. Actions define people. You abandoned me. Claire stood by me. That is why your inheritance ends here. Live with it, Ethan. For the first time, Patricia realized she had stopped being the scared mother in the nursing home. She had become a woman who had claimed back her life, her respect, and her peace. Ethan could no longer touch her spirit. Ethan's life began unraveling. His marriage faced strain as his wife resented the drama he had created. Financial stress built as he realized he had overestimated his own resources. And the loneliness, Ethan, who once thought he could abandon his mother without consequence, found himself isolated. Meanwhile, Patricia Monroe and Claire thrived. They returned to their Nashville home, cooking together, laughing, and rebuilding a life filled with warmth. Friends and neighbors noticed Patricia's resilience, admiring how she had weathered betrayal and still emerged strong. Patricia often reflected on the events quietly. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, had forged a deeper wisdom within her. She had learned that sometimes the people we love most can hurt us deeply, and that forgiveness doesn't always mean restoring trust. Life with Claire became the healing balm Patricia needed. They redecorated the house with little touches, photographs, fresh flowers, and handmade crafts. Claire often joked, "Mom, you're finally living in style." Patricia laughed genuinely, a sound she hadn't made in months. They shared meals, gardened together, and spent quiet evenings watching the sunset. Nashville, once a city of memories tinged with pain, became a place of comfort again. Patricia felt alive in ways she hadn't in years. She realized that the love she had poured into her children had not been wasted. It had simply found its proper home, in Claire, who cherished every ounce of her mother's heart. Looking back, Patricia Monroe understood a profound truth. Parents are never burdens. They are blessings. And those who betray that love will face consequences, whether through isolation, guilt, or the loss of what they assumed was owed to them. Patricia often shared her story quietly, hoping others could learn from her journey. She spoke of resilience, self-respect, and the power of standing up even when betrayal cuts deep. She had faced abandonment, but she had emerged stronger, with dignity intact. As she sat on the porch with Claire one evening, Patricia whispered, "Life teaches lessons in the harshest ways, but you will always survive if you respect yourself and recognize who truly values you."